This video is going to be the last video for this section, and it's going to be a challenge video. So I'm going to set up a little project for you to build, and you're going to go off and write all the code required to get the job done. Obviously, since we just learned about functions and a lot of their features, this one is going to be focused on just that, but it'll also require you to recall things learned in the last section, primarily if statements. Now, at this point in the course, we're going through these sections of just 6 or 7 videos to get a cursory overview of each feature. There is more to functions than what I've described so far, but it doesn't really make sense to get into super advanced function features when there are other entire parts of the language that we still don't know, things that are really important, notably objects and arrays. So while there are more to functions, and we will be talking about them in that course, this is a great place to stop for now. We'll focus on some other features, and once we have a better overview of the entire language, we'll focus on advanced parts of each. So for the moment, let's go ahead and create a brand new file for this challenge. To clean things up, I'm going to close all of the open files. You're more than welcome to leave them open. The choice is yours. And right here, I'm going to create a file called grade-calc.js. And as the name suggests, it's going to be your job to create a grade calculator function. This grade calculator function, which you'll be creating, is going to take in 2 arguments. It's going to take in the student's score, and it's going to take in the total possible score. So if I have a test worth 20 points and I get a 15 out of that 20, I would pass in 15 for the student's score and a total possible score of 20. And the goal is to generate the letter grade as well as the percentage the student got. So for that example, if I did get a 15 out of 20, that's a 75%. So I would want to print a message along the lines of the following. You got A followed by the letter grade, a 75% would be a C, and then we're going to include in parentheses their percentage. So in this case, that would be a 75%. And we can toss an exclamation mark or some other punctuation on the end. So this is the goal. Given those 2 inputs, generate the percentage, figure out what letter grade that corresponds to, and return a string. So in the end of the day, we're returning a string from the function. Just to jog your memory, here are the following groups: 90 to 100, A, 80 to 89, B, 70 to 79, C, and then for D, we got 60 to 69, and anything under 60, 0 to 59, that is considered NF. It's going to be your job to use the functions, the arguments, the if statements, the return keyword to make all of this possible. Then, down below, you're going to go ahead and actually call things. You're going to call the function, passing in the student score and the total possible score, and then you're going to print the string to the screen, making sure it looks correct based off of the input you provided. So if I do provide 15 and 20 as the 2 arguments, I would expect this exact message to print, and then just mess around with a couple of other values. Switch up the student score to fall into all of these ranges and watch all of the different letters show up. Now, I'm not going to give you any more than this. It's going to be up to you to write every single line of code using what you learned. So take some time to knock this one out, test things out, work through your bugs, use the internet or any previous videos if you need to, and when you're done, come back, click play, and we'll move through things together. Take a moment to pause the video. All right, how'd that one go? Hopefully you were able to create it without too much trouble. Step 1 is to define this function right here, let. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call mine grade calc. And then I'm going to set it equal to a function. I'll set up my arguments right here, and I'll set up my function body down below. Now, what arguments do we want? We want 2. The first one representing the actual number of points someone got on an exam, and the second one representing the total number of points. So I can call the first one score, and the second one total score or some alternative. Once again, it's not these things that are important to completing the challenge. There are infinite numbers of names that would make sense there as those argument names. Now, inside of the function, what do we want to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is calculate that percentage. That percentage is going to be calculated the same way regardless of what bracket they fall into. So right here, I can say let percent equal, and I'm going to calculate the percentage, which is the score divided by the total score. Now this would give us a decimal. So for 15 and 20, I would get 0.75. If I want to get a percentage like 75, all I have to do is multiply that value by 100. Now we have an actual percentage we can work with, and the next thing we're going to do is figure out what letter grade the percentage corresponds to. And we can get that done with if statements. I'm going to use a series of if and else if clauses to capture all of the various ranges. And I'm going to kick things off with the letter A. So right here, if. And we're going to add if, and we're going to talk about the percentage in this condition. So if the percent is greater than or equal to 90. If this is true, we know the person got an A, so we can go ahead and do what? Well, we can go ahead and return a message. So I'm going to return. I'm going to set up a template string. And then right here, we are going to start injecting those values. So you got, then A, and then inside of parentheses, we are going to add the actual percentage. So right here, how do we inject a value into template strings? Well, as we explored in the last video, $, open and close those curly braces, and reference the variable right inside, %. Excellent. Now things should be working for the letter A, and before we continue on, we can actually test it. There's no reason to create the entire function before actually testing things out. Down below, let result equal. I'm going to call grade calc to test my new function, and I will pass in 15 as the score I got and 20 as the total number of points. Then down below, console.log, passing into log the result. Let's go ahead and run this file and make sure we do get our message. Whoops, our message is actually for an A. Let's go ahead and change things. Right here, I'm going to give them an A by saying 19 out of 20 points. Now we can save things and actually run it. Node grade calc.js. When I execute the file, you get an A, 95 showing up. I also meant to add a percentage sign right after the value, so I'm going to toss that in right here. Excellent. Now we can move on to the B grade. Right now, we don't have any code that handles that. So down below, what are we going to do? Well, there are a bunch of different ways we could solve this problem, but the way I'm going to go with is to add an else if clause right here. We're going to provide another condition and another block of code to run if the condition is true. Now, what do we want to do here? We want to see if the grade is in this range. So we want to see if it's greater than or equal to 80 and less than or equal to 89. That means we need to add two conditions. But do we really? We already know that we do not have any A's showing up here, because if the student did get an A, it would have already been caught by the code above. So all we really need to do is check if the percent is greater than or equal to 80. You might say, hey, what about a 99? Well, don't worry about that, because a 99 would have gotten caught above and the code would have returned. This condition would never actually run for a 99. So this is all we need to see if the student got a B. Now, what are we going to do here? Well, what we're going to do in here is return a message, and the message is going to be so similar to the one above. If we copy and paste it down below, all we really do is change a letter. We change A to B. Well, this gets the job done. It's not the most efficient way because we have this string in many different places. So if I wanted to change the sentence, for example, I would have to go through and change every single instance of it. While this is a perfectly fine way to get the job done, I'm going to show you an alternative solution. First off, though, let's go ahead and actually get a B. I'll give myself 17 out of 20 points. I'll rerun things over in the terminal. And right here, I do have you got a B at 85%. Now what we're going to do before we add the other letter grades is restructure things just a little bit. Up above, what we're going to do is create let, and I'm going to call this one let letter grade, and I am going to set it equal to, and we can just start it off as an empty string or undefined or something along those lines. What we're going to do is change the value of letter grade inside of the if code blocks. Then after the if code blocks, we will return a template string. That's going to make sure that we don't have duplicate code inside of our function. So let's see what that would look like. Right here, inside of this if statement, we're going to set letter grade equal to and A. Then we can actually remove the return statement right here. In this code block, we're going to set letter grade equal to B. Then we can remove this return statement right here. I'm actually going to cut it out instead of deleting it completely because we're going to use it just down below. After our if statement, but still inside of the function, we're going to paste that line. Now we are returning the string, and all we have to do is replace the static letter B with the value of letter grade. So right here, $ curly braces. Whoops, there we go. $ curly braces. And inside of there, we reference the letter grade variable. So hopefully you're able to see why this is preferred. Instead of having this sentence in all sorts of different places, we have it in just one, making it much easier to update and maintain. Now we can continue on with our if statement, else if. We're going to check if the % is greater than or equal to 70, and if it is, we know the student has a C, so letter grade equals C. Next up, else if. Let's go ahead and figure out if they got a D. If the % is greater than or equal to 60, then we know they got a D. Right here, letter grade equals D. And the final thing we're going to check is if they got an F. Now we could use an else if to see if their grade was above 0, but if they didn't get an A, B, C, or D, we know they got an F. So we could actually just use else. This code is only ever going to run if they do not fall in any of the other ranges. So in here, letter grade equals F, just like this. Now that we have the if statements in place, we can actually test things out. I'm going to switch it up from a 17 to a 15. This should give the student a C. Let's go ahead and save the file and rerun things. We got our file right here. I rerun it, and I see you got a C, 75% printing. So our new system of setting letter grade up above and just returning a single template string down below is clearly working. Let's switch up the grade again. I'm going to go to a 13, which should give them a D. And you can see right here, you got a D at 65%. And then I'll switch things up to a 9, which should be an F. I'll rerun it. You got an F at 45%. So this is what I wanted you to do for the challenge. As I've mentioned plenty of times before, the individual details aren't important. You might find that your code doesn't look just like mine. If I were to write this 5 times, I'm sure I could come up with a different solution each time without even really thinking about it. What is important though is that given the inputs, you got the correct output. In order to get the correct output, you would have had to use things like if statements and function arguments and template strings. Maybe you didn't use template strings, maybe you used regular strings with concatenation. That's fine too, but in that case, I do challenge you to take a quick moment to upgrade to use template strings, as they are a lot nicer to work with. All right, that's going to be it for this challenge, and that's also it for this section. We have a basic understanding of how functions work in JavaScript. What we're going to do is move on to the next section and take a look at a couple of other types that are essential to working with JavaScript in the real world. I'm very excited to get to that, so let's go ahead and jump right in to the section intro for that one.